fast forward from the Old Testament to the New, and what do we see? Moses. There he is again, and again we see him on the mountaintop. This time he's with Elijah and Jesus and 3 lowly fishermen, the disciples Peter, James and John. They've climbed that mountain with Jesus, but they weren't sure what was about to happen. But they were sure of one thing: Jesus was a special person. They'd left their livelihoods and families to follow him. They witnessed him healing, raising the dead, and walking on water. But still, nothing prepared them for that dramatic change that would happen to Jesus on that mountaintop. Here were these 3 ordinary guys who lived with him day in and day out. Jesus was their mate, and they knew him. Yet on this day, he was revealed to them in a new and radical way. They were speechless, dumbstruck. Let me bring in an earthly illustration about falling in love. It is St. Valentine's Day after all. Can you remember that moment when standing in the presence of someone you have just realised you're in love with? Do you recall your inability to be able to string a sentence together? Do you remember your heart beating in your chest and the way you needed to hold the look in their eyes? Such moments are times of transfiguration. A friend becomes more than a friend. That's an amazing cloud 9 moment. Now, transfiguration happens every time love takes centre stage, when the ordinary changes into something extraordinary. Jesus transfigured into something extraordinary and limitless before his friends' eyes that day on the mountaintop. His radiance was dazzling, and his clothes became as white as light, an image nothing like Peter, James and John had ever seen before. It showed them that Jesus truly was from God. Here was their transformed friend appearing before them with the great figures of the Jewish scriptures, Moses and Elijah. Moses was the giver of law, and Elijah was the archetypal prophet. Together they represented the whole of the Old Testament, which looked forward to the coming of the Messiah. And here he was, Jesus, the fulfillment of the story the disciples had been told about from their childhood. Here he was in conversation with these 2 mighty men who too had had their mountaintop experiences with God. And there was God's word, heard through a cloud, declaring that Jesus was indeed God's beloved. Here again, it is love, God's love, which completely transfigures their friend Jesus. They now see him with new eyes. Now, Peter wants to capture this amazing moment in a slightly bizarre way. Building tents was his suggestion to preserve the euphoria. But God cuts off Peter's request with a clear command to shut up and listen to Jesus. True to form, Peter blurts out before thinking. He totally misses the point. Jesus had no intention of staying on the mountain. He had work to do, and so did Peter. Jesus' presence would not be exclusively tied to the mountaintop experience. No, he would also be found in the valleys. Of course, Peter touches something in the reader. I wonder if there's a little bit of us that wants to be up there forever, up close and personal with the awesome power of God. Who would ever want to leave? Now the problem is, these moments can't be captured. Time can't stand still. Life takes over. I always think that's why we love photographs. We see a beautiful landscape, a sunset or a loved one laughing, and we want to press that button. and encapsulate wonder, frozen in time. Now, we spoke earlier of that first flush of love that takes us to the pinnacle of desire and wonder. The honeymoon phase, they call it. Deep down, we all know that passes, and we fall from cloud 9 and hit the reality of life. And that's where the hard work begins, creating a love that's sustainable through good and dark times. From the top of the mountain, Jesus has his eyes firmly affixed on Jerusalem and the cross awaiting him. He knew as he descended with his disciples, the mountaintop experience would be followed by a very real and very painful valley of suffering and death. But meanwhile, as they reached the dark valley below, there was work to be done. The other disciples were dealing with a man who had brought his epileptic boy to be healed. The disciples didn't know what to do, and the other 3 with him were still up on cloud 9. Jesus was fed up and said, "You faithless generation." Then he healed the boy. And we are all in that dark valley of fear and suffering at the moment. Our world is in crisis, and this is the time that we must all stay alert and give ourselves a chance to shine a light into the darkness. We have to come down from mountaintops and engage in the work of discipleship. The work is down in the valley, where every day people are waiting for light, are waiting for hope, love and healing.